Hello, good day, good morning, good afternoon. Depends on when you're watching, what time it is at your place. I hope you will all enjoy this episode of Inside the Cube. We're actually going to be doing the first actual episode. Holy shit. How to mute on stream. Fuck me. Pardon me there. But yeah, we're going to be doing the first episode of Inside the Cube today. Last time was the first special. Specials are episodes I do every single time there's a new patch, where I'll be covering my thoughts on green within the current patch. I will cover if anything has changed, and if anything has changed, I will most likely make that as a note for you guys. Other than that, today we're going to be analyzing the winner from the Saturday tournament's deck. Dodd was actually the winner of the tournament. There was some slight mishaps in the tournament, but we actually have a legit winner, and it was a very good and very interesting tournament. And I really looked forward to watching it. It was actually a really good tournament. I look forward to the next week's tournament. And other than that, let's just jump right into it, shall we? So Todd's actual tournament deck is, as you can see before you, very weird, considering that the tournament was being conducted after a patch had been released that nerfed cards like Weapon Rack and Scapegrace. It also buffed Luna Moki, which was actually not even in his considerations when submitting the deck. So something that Dodd didn't realize was actually that the patches had been released. So he actually submitted a deck that he hadn't tested after the patches, or the patch, sorry. So I was actually talking to Dodd, and he didn't realize that he needed more lakes in his deck. That's why he plays Call the Lakes. He wanted Call the Lake in there, so he would go to a bit more lake count, so he had an easier time sideboarding. It was also a very good trick for him to have in the main board, and I actually think it did some work. Other than that, as you know from the patch, Scapegrace become a 0-3 with Curse 2. He actually didn't know that before he actually went in to play it, and then he was like, why doesn't this have damage? Which is interesting to note, that a player playing a deck that isn't optimized could actually go ahead and win a tournament. That shows you that even though your deck is not fully optimized, as long as you're playing it well, because Dodd played this deck very well, you can actually have a fairly good chance at winning a tournament anyways. Anyways, let's just jump right into his main board here. It's a lot easier for me to go over if we have it in text format, as we have right here. So I'll be sticking to the text format, and then I'll be redirecting over to the image format after as soon as we go over to his sideboard. So as you see in Dodd's main board, he's playing a total of 40 cards. He has a total of 9 actual event tricks in his deck, which is actually not a lot. So when I say tricks, I mean every card that will allow you to either buff the damage of your creatures, a card that will move your creature, or move another creature. So anything that revolves around trying to move creatures, or buff creatures, maybe kill them as well, with cards like Runic Flash and such. So he's playing 2 Tiki Songs, 2 Triton's Wrath, 2 Flux Caprice, 2 Weapon Racks, and a Call the Lake. The Weapon Racks was actually in there because he didn't know that they had nerfed it, just as the Scapegrace is in here. So it is very interesting to note that he's still playing those kind of cards, and they actually put Weapon Racks to good use, still at 2 gold. When you look at his tricks, he has a wide variety of tricks he can actually use. He chose to go ahead and play 2 Tiki Songs, 2 Triton's Wrath, and 2 Flux Caprice. Tiki Song and Triton's Wrath kind of filling the same role, but Tiki Song costing 2 more gold than Triton's Wrath, and Triton's Wrath having some other capabilities, for example, not needing a forest to be used to its full effect, and so on and so forth. Also, the jumping mechanic can be very nice in certain situations. So I really like how he did this. I really dislike playing if you have like so many tricks to choose from, I really dislike playing 3 of all of them. I really like playing 2 of all of them because it puts yourself at a test of when to use what trick. But that doesn't mean that it is just always better to play 3 because you don't have to choose, because you still do. And sometimes too many tricks are just too many. I really like the overall 9 tricks play style. Or I was going to say deck, but that isn't really a fair estimate. So, just having a total of 9 tricks in the deck is really something I enjoy when playing these kind of very low, creature-centered decks. So what I mean by that is if we go further down his list, there's actually not really any very big creatures in the deck. His biggest creature is down in the dudes, which are in the bottom, which is the Ghost of Aeronor. The reason that I didn't make another, fatties post for the Ghost of Aeronor is if you look at the deck, it doesn't really have other fatties, and this Ghost of Aeronor utilizes Fera that you might not be utilizing from elsewhere. So, his deck is very centered around playing small creatures that don't have a lot of attack, but maybe have more movement abilities. Like, for example, the Elenese favorite, the Tiki Pathfinder, and the Savage Tiki, to make movements so he can put Wardens and Weapon Racks to better use, as well as the Tiki Shaman's additional, damage ability. That way, it's kind of like playing how blue plays it, like the mono blue aggressive decks, is that you have a lot of small creatures. You don't really have any creatures that go above 2 or 3 attack, but then you use other cards to boost their attack, so that even if your creatures are very small, that also means that they cost less than your opponent's creatures, so you can play more creatures in a turn than your opponent can, because of your creatures being smaller. So if your opponent is, for example, playing green, and he might play a tree folk, and then a giant Aporia. In that, that's one of the scenarios where you could actually just go that, but that doesn't allow space for him to make any lands or anything. With this kind of deck, you can make a land, play favorite, make a land, play Moki Fellow, make a land, and then play something like Savage Tiki behind your guys. It is really a deck that allows you to have a lot of choices, and some of them being very hard to make and play correctly, which is why I like these kind of decks. I think they're very good decks, and I think they're very skill intensive. Anyways, just excuse me for one moment. Oh, some water is very nice. So we have some creature tricks here. When I say creature tricks, I basically mean cards that are tricks in and of itself, but also cards that are being a creature while doing other things. So, for example, you have cards that have haste, meaning the Luna Mokis and the Savage Tikis in this case scenario. They're cards that will do something the moment he plays them, but they're still creatures, so they still impact the board more than, let's say, a Trident's Wrath would, in a case where the Trident's Wrath would do essentially the same thing as the Luna Moki. As I said before, he's playing cards that buff other cards, meaning he's playing the Gabriel Warden. Some people keep telling me that Gabriel Warden isn't really a trick, but I actually disagree. Gabriel Warden is a very good trick because it is like one of those play out of hand cards where if you have if Dodd have a Swamp Rim down, his opponent then plays a Tree Folk, not expecting it to die. He plays a Gabriel Warden, suddenly camp, bow, dead Tree Folk, you know? So it allows you to gain a damage that your opponent wasn't expecting if he didn't think about it enough. So sometimes it just takes your opponent off guard. The reason Tiki Pathfinder is also in there as a creature trick is because it also does something when you actually play the card. Meaning that it will take an opponent's land. We have the eco section again, as we actually saw last week when I did, or not last week, I guess that's actually only 2 days ago, when I did that, Inside the Cube special number 1, where I tried to make note of Green's current very strong economy, being the Singing Teepees and the Tiki Pathfinders. The Tiki Shamans. The singing teepees are probably one of the better actual economy like structures in the game now, or just economy cards in general. One fairy of run one goals for gaining an action every turn is not a very high cost. It's actually a low cost compared to something like the Overgrown Tower, which only sticks around for 4 turns. That being said, you do have to wait 5 turns for the Singing TP to be more effective than the Overgrown Tower. Although the Overgrown Tower is so good that I shouldn't, like, you can't note either one to be stronger because they're both really good cards. And I really like both, and I think both are worth running in every green deck if you, like, need the economy and have the fairy to spare. So, like, the deck is very standard if you actually just look at it. It is just like small creatures with creatures that buff other creatures, or creatures that actually buff each other when, like, another creature is played, which is the Savage TQ, or stuff like Gabriel Warden, which buff other creatures when it comes into play or when it's on the board. So, why don't we just go over and look at his sideboard for a second, and then we'll talk a bit about that. His sideboard is 3 Mossbringers, 2 Edelin Sentinels, 3 land renewals, a weapon rack, and a Tiki song. So I think Dodd really feared the ret matchup when playing this deck, because all of his creatures don't have a lot of health. So if you go back and look at the deck list, he has the favorites, he has the Luna Mokis, he has the Savage Tikis. All of them have a very low health count, so they will all just die to a Fire Flap. So I think really what Dodd was trying to do with his sideboard was to make his red matchup, like his structured matchups, a lot better with the Mossbringers and land renewals. I think he has Sentinel in here for the purpose of trying to be better against other aggressive decks, because a 1/4 with a weapon rack or a warden and the 1/4 has strike back 1 is not to be taken lightly. It is a very strong card at that point. He also plays the 3rd Tiki song, which I actually kind of like, since it allows him to take in another trick in the green matchups where he might need the damage to take care of something like Poltergeist, Giant Boreal, Living Willow, or cards like those. It also just allows him to have a bit more maneuverability if he actually needs it in some matchups, which is very nice. I really like it. Again, the weapon rack kind of filled the same slot in my mind, being able to come in against decks where you really need the damage, which is like against cards like the Red Flame Basilisk or Poltergeist, for other cards of that kind of category. So I really enjoy this kind of deck, and I really think his sideboard is well put together. Like, I guess the only thing that I might see in here is more blue cards, since when he made his deck, he wasn't sure that he could actually take out a lot of blue cards. And when we look at the main board here, he is playing 30 lakes, so if he takes out the Calder Lake, he would still be down to 27 lakes, which is enough. So even without the Calder Lake in here, he would be at 24 lakes, so he could play like any card that would cost another lake. I think the Calder Lake is a fine choice because it's going to catch his opponent off guard, but I would rather have seen it in the sideboard so he could bring it in if he needed more lakes, since it is one of the cards in the game that costs more lakes, and since the tournament had a 25 land, like, the tournament had a specific like rule set to it that you needed to have 2 different two different lands in your deck, like types, and both of them needed to be at least at 25 lands each. So other than that, I really like the deck, and I think we should go over and look at Dodd's deck, because I asked him if he could actually make me a deck with the new patch in mind, so that I could try and analyze his thoughts of the new deck compared to his old deck. So if you look at his new deck, which is right here, it has a lot of different cards in it. And again, I would just like to take a brief moment so you can like actually see the deck list with the images and like their power and toughness and so on, and then I'll go over to the text format because it's a lot easier to analyze. So, when we go over and look at this deck, compared to the other deck, the deck still plays around those 9 tricks. This time, he simply replaced his weapon racks and his Call the Legs with a Might and Guts. Since Might and Guts got a buff in the patch, now only costing 3 gold or 4 gold, 2 Feria, it is a very, very strong card now. It allows you to attack more than twice with cards like the Savage Tiki or the Eleni's Favorite, which he's still playing in his decks. I really like this approach because it just allows him to be more versatile with a lot of his creatures. He also realized that suddenly he could play cards that were more expensive, like the Poltergeist, and he also, since the Poltergeist is at 2 lands, a 2 Faria now, it's just a lot easier for him to cast in the deck. And then he also decided that he needed a bit more fatties in the deck, so he actually went ahead and added the Giant Arboreus times 2 in there. I really like this approach. I think the approach is really good. It's very similar to his old deck, like going by the same logic of him having small creatures. This time he has less small creatures, being he took out the weapon rags and the root scapegraces, which gave him a lot more breathing room, not needing to play those kind of cards. Then he chose to go ahead and take out the Call the Lake as well, meaning that the 2 weapon racks and the Call the Lake turned into Might and Guts since they received a buff. He also realized that he didn't need as many lakes because suddenly Luna Moki was 3 lakes instead of 2. So he went ahead and put in the Giant Arboreus to have more forest counts in here. So if you go back and look at the image over here, he only plays precisely 25 lakes. He does not want to go higher. He's playing a total of 44 Feria. That is a lot of Feria. As I've been saying in my past couple of videos, I would not recommend you to go over 40 Feria in any deck. I think 40 Feria is a lot of Feria, and sometimes it just gets too much. I dislike playing more than 40. There, I can see going over, but I really dislike it. I think it's not needed, and I don't know. His deck is rushy, so he might actually be able to take a Feria spawn from his opponent and then be on 3 Feria spawns, which would make it a lot easier for him to play these kind of cards. I don't know. I feel like he should cut down a bit on the Feria in the deck. I think the way I would do it is I would probably take out 1 Might and Guts and 1 Ghost and then put in 2 other cards. I'm not quite sure what cards I would put in because there's so many ways of playing this deck that there's just a lot of things to take into consideration. I think what I would actually play for the deck is something that is only gold based. So if you go back and look at his first deck, a card that he's actually missing from this deck list compared to the other one is the weapon racks. I don't think he would mind still playing the weapon racks, being only 1 Feria. I really think he could still play them. I think the root scapegrace ain't that bad either, because suddenly he has a total of 4 haunt creatures. Though taking out a ghost would only leave him at 3 haunt creatures, it would give him an actual way of winning the game that his opponent wouldn't see coming. It is very hard to justify playing the root scapegrace now because they don't have damage though. So it is hard to try and play those kind of cards. Oh, sorry, I said weapon racks, didn't I? I meant root scapegrace. I'm very, very sorry. Wow. Excuse me. I meant, holy shit. I meant root scapegrace because it would give him more cards to trigger his Savage Cheeky, and it would just allow him to have an alternative win condition of walking all over his opponent's land while playing safely with the Ghost and the Poltergeist, and then winning the game that way. I wouldn't mind seeing that in here, but it's a lot of personal preference and how you want to play the deck. I could even see Lady Lamed in this deck working, which is also a fine card to play. Other than that, I don't really have a lot more for this week, since I didn't actually get a mail this week with a deck that a player would like me to analyze for him and go over. So if you would like to see me go over more than the winning deck for the tournament, please go ahead and send me a mail with a deck list in it. It is at the mail Feria Cube snabelade@gmail.com. Please send me a deck list. I'll gladly go over it for you. I would like to thank you all for watching. It have been very nice streaming for you guys, and more than that, I don't really have a lot. So thanks for watching. I really enjoyed trying to analyze these decks for you, and thanks for Dodd doing a very, very good deck list and a very good performance in the tournament. I hope he enjoyed his time, and I hope you enjoyed your time here trying to listen to me analyze these decks. I am very sorry for some of the mistakes I made this video, considering it is my second video. I will cut myself some slack. I will try and improve. Other than that, have a very good day. I will go ahead and post a forum link with the video. I will post deck list in there, both in the text format and in the actual image format, so you guys can go ahead and look at them on your own. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. It's been great. Cubes, I'll see you later.